Chapter 1. Whispers of a New Beginning. Spring had arrived early that year, the air crisp yet filled with a warmth that promised renewal. The countryside seemed to awaken from the slumber of winter, shaking off the cold and letting the world breathe again. The fields, once bare, now shimmered with green shoots, while buds slowly unfurled on the branches of the trees, eager to catch the sunlight. In the distance, soft hills stretched into the horizon, their curves gentle as if sculpted by the very wind that danced over them. At the heart of this landscape stood a modest town. Its cobbled streets meandered like veins, leading to and from houses adorned with ivy, their brick walls basking in the golden light of the season. Life in the town moved at a slower pace, the rhythm dictated by nature and the passage of time rather than the rush of the modern world. It was a place where people greeted each other with knowing glances, and the silence was comforting, not lonely. Here, life had a way of speaking without words, through gestures and shared moments. It was in one such moment that Mara first appeared in the town's periphery. She had always been there, in the background of the seasons, her presence unnoticed by many yet quietly essential to the town's fabric. Her house sat at the edge of a wide meadow, its windows framed by the creeping tendrils of wisteria. From her porch, she could see the vastness of the field, its colors changing as the sky shifted. On this particular day, as the first true warmth of spring embraced the earth, she stepped outside, letting the door creak softly as it closed behind her. The meadow stretched out before her, the ground soft beneath her shoes. As she walked, the world seemed to hum with quiet activity. Bees busy with their early tasks, the rustle of the breeze as it skimmed through the grasses, and the gentle calls of birds overhead. Everything was alive with the whisper of new beginnings, though Mara herself felt more like an observer than a participant. She paused at the edge of the meadow, where the path curved into a small wooded area. The trees here stood tall and proud, their branches still bare but showing signs of life. As she wandered deeper into the woods, the sunlight filtered through the canopy in patches, dappling the ground with fleeting pools of light. There was something about the woods, a quiet serenity that allowed her to think, to breathe more easily. It was along this same path that Adam walked, though his steps were driven by the routine of his daily life. His home, nestled on the other side of the town, bordered the woodland, a place of solace for him, too. Each step he took carried the weight of years spent in this town, his connection to the land as deep as the roots of the trees around him. His hands, calloused from work, grazed the bark of a nearby oak as he passed by. He didn't hurry, he never did, for he had learned that patience yielded the best rewards. As he followed the familiar trail, something in the air felt different, a change he couldn't quite place. The path ahead opened into a clearing, the meadow spreading out before him in all its spring glory. It was there, on the cusp of nature's edge, that he saw Mara for the first time that year. She stood in quiet contemplation, her figure bathed in the soft glow of the afternoon sun. He stopped just short of the clearing, allowing himself a moment to observe. There was a stillness to her that echoed the peace of the landscape, a calmness that mirrored the season's slow awakening. Mara moved with a grace he admired, her hands brushing the tops of the wildflowers as if in communion with the earth itself. Though they had lived in the same town for years, their paths had never crossed in such a way, at least not with the same significance. The world seemed to slow in that instant. The sky overhead deepened in hue as clouds drifted lazily by, casting shifting shadows over the meadow. The breeze stirred once more, lifting the edges of Mara's dress as it fluttered against her legs. She turned, as if sensing his presence, though her gaze remained focused on the distant hills. Adam felt something stir within him, a gentle pull that he couldn't quite understand. The town, in all its quiet rhythms, had never been a place for grand gestures or dramatic moments. Yet here, Amidst the blossoming trees and the awakening earth, something was beginning to unfold. It was subtle, like the first sign of spring after the coldest of winters, a fragile promise that took root without anyone noticing. Mara began to walk again, her steps deliberate yet unhurried. She followed the curve of the meadow, her figure gradually becoming smaller as the distance between them grew. Adam watched her retreat into the landscape until she disappeared into the woods beyond, the leaves whispering in the wind as she passed. He stood there for a while, not moving, as if the world around him had paused in her absence. There was no rush, no need for words or explanations. The meadow remained unchanged, yet somehow different. Something had shifted, something had begun. And so, as the sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows over the land, Adam turned and made his way back along the path. His thoughts were quiet, but his heart, though still, carried the gentle hum of possibility. The day would end soon, the light fading into the night. But in the quiet of the town, amidst the budding trees and the whisper of spring, a new beginning had taken root, unspoken yet undeniable. Chapter 2. The First Glimpse. The morning sun broke through the clouds the next day, casting a soft, golden glow over the town. Spring's presence was undeniable now, the earth coming alive in a delicate symphony of renewal. The air carried the fresh scent of damp soil and budding leaves, and a faint mist lingered over the meadows, slowly dissipating as the warmth of the day grew. Mara woke early, as she often did, her movements unhurried as she prepared for the day ahead. Her house, filled with the gentle clutter of a life lived in quiet simplicity, felt peaceful. Light filtered through the lace curtains, dappling the wooden floors with soft, shifting patterns. She lingered at the window, watching the world outside as it stirred with life. The meadow, now more vibrant in the early sunlight, stretched endlessly before her. Birds flitted between the branches, their songs filling the air with a joyous melody. The wildflowers had opened fully, their petals catching the sun, while the grass, still damp with dew, shimmered like a sea of emerald. It was a place that had always brought Mara a sense of calm, a constant amidst the ever-changing seasons of her life. She stepped outside, the cool morning air brushing against her skin, and made her way down the familiar path that led to the meadow. The ground was soft beneath her feet, the earth still moist from the previous night's dew. As she walked, her hand grazed the tops of the wildflowers, their fragile stems bending gently under her touch. Further away, the trees that bordered the meadow stood tall, their branches slowly unfurling with new leaves. The canopy overhead was beginning to thicken, casting dappled shadows over the path. The woods beyond had always been a place of solace for her, a retreat where the noise of the world seemed to fall away. Today, though, she felt drawn to the meadow itself, its vastness offering a different kind of peace. On the opposite side of the town, Adam was also awake, his routine as steady as the rise of the sun. His mornings were spent tending to the small tasks that kept his life moving at a comfortable rhythm. The town had always been enough for him, its quiet streets and simple way of life providing the balance he sought. Yet, as spring arrived with its subtle promise of change, Adam couldn't shake the feeling that something more was stirring beneath the surface of his quiet existence. His thoughts returned to the day before, to the moment he had seen Mara standing alone in the meadow. The image of her had lingered with him, a fleeting glimpse of something unspoken, yet deeply felt. He hadn't expected to think of her again, but now, as he made his way through the town's winding streets, the memory tugged at him like the soft pull of the wind through the trees. Today, he found himself walking the same path as the day before, his steps carrying him towards the meadow once more. The morning light filtered through the trees as he passed, casting long, thin shadows on the ground. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, though it remained elusive, as if nature itself was on the brink of something, waiting patiently for the moment to arrive. When he reached the edge of the meadow, he stopped. In the distance, amidst the expanse of green and gold, he saw her again. Mara was walking slowly, her movements calm and deliberate, as if the very earth beneath her feet was guiding her steps. She seemed so much a part of the landscape that, for a moment, it was difficult to tell where she ended and the meadow began. Adam stood still, watching her from the shadows of the trees, his breath quiet and steady. There was no urgency in the moment, only a quiet connection between him and the land, and, somehow, between him and Mara. The wind stirred slightly, ruffling the edges of her dress as she moved, and the wildflowers bent gently under the breeze. As Mara continued her slow journey across the meadow, she stopped at the edge of a small stream that cut through the land. The water, clear and cool, bubbled softly as it wound its way through the grass, reflecting the sunlight in shimmering ribbons. She knelt beside the stream, her fingers lightly tracing the surface of the water, feeling the smooth, cold flow over her skin. The world around her seemed to hold its breath, the stillness broken only by the soft murmur of the stream and the distant rustling of the trees. Adam remained on the edge of the meadow, watching her as she lingered by the water. There was something about the scene that felt timeless, as if it could have been happening 100 years ago or 100 years into the future, and it would still carry the same quiet beauty. He wasn't sure why he stayed, but the peacefulness of the moment held him there, rooted to the spot like the trees that lined the meadow. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the warmth of the day grew, and the mist that had hovered over the meadow in the early morning began to evaporate. The colors of the landscape deepened, the greens more vibrant, the wildflowers more brilliant in the sunlight. Mara stood once again, her gaze lingering on the stream for a moment longer before she turned and began to walk back towards the woods. Her steps were slow, unhurried, as if she had all the time in the world. She moved with the same quiet grace that had captivated Adam the day before, and though she didn't know he was there, something in her seemed to sense the presence of another. As she neared the edge of the meadow, her gaze drifted toward the trees, her eyes catching the shifting shadows between the branches. Adam, still hidden from view, remained motionless, his breath steady and calm. He didn't want to intrude on the moment, didn't want to disturb the quiet connection he felt to the land and, in some way, to her. But as Mara reached the edge of the woods and disappeared into the trees, the silence of the meadow seemed to echo with the promise of something more. The day continued on, the sun climbing higher into the sky, casting the meadow in a golden glow. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of wildflowers through the air. The town, tucked away in its quiet routine, continued to move at its own steady pace, unaware of the small, silent moments unfolding in the meadow beyond. Adam finally turned away, his steps slower now as he made his way back along the path. The world felt different somehow, though nothing tangible had changed. The landscape was the same, the town as familiar as ever, yet there was a quiet hum of anticipation in the air, a sense that the earth itself was preparing for something to unfold. As he walked, the trees cast long shadows across the path, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. The woods felt alive with the quiet energy of spring, the promise of new beginnings carried on the wind. And though Adam couldn't yet fully understand what was shifting in the world around him, he knew that something had been set in motion, something as inevitable and as beautiful as the arrival of spring itself. And so, with the sun dipping lower in the sky and the air growing cooler, Adam made his way back to his home, the quiet hum of the meadow still lingering in his thoughts. Chapter 3. Beneath blossoming trees. The days lengthened as spring deepened, stretching the golden hours of sunlight into long, languid afternoons. The town had settled into its familiar rhythms, with life moving forward quietly, unburdened by haste or the clamor of busy streets. Around every corner, the signs of the season's growth could be seen. Flowers blooming along stone walls, fresh green vines creeping up wooden fences, and gardens coming to life in vivid splashes of color. It was as if the world had awoken from a long dream, ready to embrace the warmth and light that spring brought. Mara had become attuned to these changes, her steps mirroring the slow, steady pulse of the land. Each morning, she would rise early, just as the sun began to kiss the horizon, and set out along the familiar path that led her through the meadow. There was a comforting regularity to her days, her time spent moving through the quiet, unnoticed corners of the town and the untamed stretches of the countryside beyond. One morning, as she walked toward the meadow, the scent of lilacs filled the air, their fragrant blooms swaying gently in the breeze. The path, bordered by towering trees, had become a sanctuary for her, a place where the noise of the world was muted, where she could simply exist within the quiet, steady hum of nature. Overhead, the trees had fully bloomed, their branches heavy with pale pink blossoms that swayed gently in the soft spring wind. Petals, shaken loose by the breeze, drifted down like confetti, carpeting the path in delicate pinks and whites. The trees, ancient and wise, stood like sentinels along the edge of the meadow, their roots twisted deep into the soil, their branches arching gracefully overhead. Mara felt a deep connection to these trees, their steadfastness mirroring her own quiet resilience. She paused beneath one of the largest oaks, its trunk wide and gnarled, and closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, the whisper of the wind in her hair. As the sun rose higher, its warmth began to melt away the lingering coolness of the morning, filling the air with a sense of renewal. Mara continued along the path, her steps leading her deeper into the meadow, where the tall grass swayed in the wind, its soft, rhythmic movement soothing her restless mind. The wildflowers, now in full bloom, painted the landscape with vibrant hues of yellow, purple, and white, their heads nodding gently in the breeze. Unbeknownst to Mara, Adam had also risen early that morning, drawn once again to the quiet beauty of the meadow. His routine, though simple, was comforting in its predictability. His life, much like the town, had a steady, unhurried rhythm that he had grown accustomed to over the years. Yet, in the past few days, something had shifted within him, a quiet stirring as subtle and elusive as the first breath of spring. He found himself walking the same path as before, the one that led to the meadow, his steps unhurried, his mind quietly reflective. The world around him felt different, though he couldn't quite place why. Perhaps it was the season, or perhaps it was something more, something that had been set in motion when he had first glimpsed Mara moving silently through the meadow. As he approached the edge of the trees, the same towering oaks that had sheltered the path for generations, he noticed her again. Mara, standing beneath the arching branches of a blossoming tree, her figure bathed in the soft light of the morning sun. She seemed at ease in the moment, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she were a part of the landscape itself. Her hands grazed the bark of the tree, her fingers tracing its rough surface with quiet reverence. Adam stopped short of the clearing, remaining partially hidden by the shadows of the trees. He didn't want to intrude on the moment, didn't want to disturb the stillness that seemed to hang in the air like the scent of the lilacs. Instead, he simply watched, his breath steady, his gaze fixed on the way Mara moved through the world with such quiet grace. The meadow stretched out before them, an endless expanse of green and gold, with wildflowers bending under the weight of the wind. Above, the sky was a brilliant shade of blue, with only a few clouds drifting lazily across its surface. It was a perfect spring day, the kind that made everything seem possible, the kind that filled the heart with an unspoken hope. Mara moved slowly, her steps leading her toward the heart of the meadow, where the grass grew tallest and the wildflowers bloomed in the brightest colors. She knelt beside a patch of daisies, her hands gently brushing the petals, as if greeting an old friend. There was something sacred in the way she moved, something deeply connected to the land, as if she were drawing strength from the earth itself. Adam watched from the shadows, his thoughts quiet but his heart full. He couldn't quite understand the pull he felt toward her, this woman who moved through the world with such quiet solitude. There had been no words between them, no formal introduction, yet something unspoken had passed between them, something as intangible and fleeting as the wind. As the morning wore on, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the meadow. The breeze picked up slightly, carrying with it the scent of lilacs and the faint, distant hum of bees busy at their work. The trees, heavy with blossoms, swayed gently in the wind, their branches creaking softly like the whispered secrets of an ancient forest. Mara, her time in the meadow drawing to a close, rose slowly to her feet. She turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the rolling hills met the sky in a soft blur of green and blue. The world seemed vast and endless before her, full of possibilities and quiet beauty. She stood there for a moment longer, her hands brushing the wildflowers one last time, before she turned and began to make her way back toward the path. As she passed beneath the blossoming trees, Adam stepped further into the shadows, his heart pounding with an unspoken awareness. He wasn't ready for their paths to cross again. Not yet. There was something about this quiet connection, this silent understanding, that he didn't want to rush. It was fragile, like the petals that drifted down from the trees, and he knew that it needed time to bloom fully. Mara, unaware of his presence, continued her walk, her figure growing smaller as she disappeared into the woods beyond the meadow. The trees, with their heavy branches and ancient roots, stood tall and still, as if guarding the secrets of the land. The world around them remained quiet, save for the soft rustle of the wind and the distant call of birds. Adam remained where he stood, his gaze lingering on the spot where Mara had disappeared. There was a sense of peace in the air, a quiet certainty that something was unfolding, slowly and surely, beneath the surface. The meadow, with its wildflowers and blossoming trees, had become more than just a place. It had become a meeting ground for something deeper, something beyond words. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the landscape, Adam turned and made his way back along the path. His thoughts were calm, his heart steady, but there was a quiet hum of anticipation in the air, a sense that the world was on the cusp of change. And so, as the day slipped into evening, and the sky turned shades of pink and orange, the meadow remained, bathed in the soft glow of spring. The trees, heavy with blossoms, swayed gently in the breeze, their petals falling like whispers of a promise yet to be fulfilled. Chapter 4. Echoes in the Quiet. The days continued to slip by in the quiet town, each one arriving with the subtle unfolding of spring's beauty. The meadow, with its wildflowers and tall grass, had become a tapestry of vibrant colors and life, a place where the rhythm of the earth could be felt in every gust of wind and ripple of the stream. Mara's visits to this sanctuary became more frequent, her steps unhurried as she found solace in its stillness. There was something about the meadow that spoke to her in a way nothing else did. It was a place where time seemed to stretch and bend, where the pressures of the world faded, and the only sound was the soft rustling of the wind through the trees. Mara, in her quiet way, had found a refuge here. Each morning, as the sun broke over the horizon and bathed the landscape in golden light, she would set out from her small house, making her way along the familiar path. The meadow had become a place where she could simply be, where the weight of expectation, of the unspoken struggles she carried, could be left behind. It was as if the very land had opened its arms to her, offering her a space to breathe, to heal. And so, she walked its paths, her steps light and steady, her hands grazing the tall grass and wildflowers as she passed. This morning, like so many before it, she had risen early, the faint light of dawn barely breaking through the curtains. The air was still cool, but there was a promise of warmth in the day ahead, the kind of day that invited the earth to bloom in earnest. As she made her way through the trees that bordered the meadow, the sight before her filled her with a quiet sense of peace. The wildflowers had grown taller, their colors more vibrant than ever. The trees that lined the edge of the meadow had fully blossomed now, their branches heavy with pale pink petals. Beneath them, the ground was carpeted in a soft blanket of fallen petals, each one a delicate whisper of the spring wind. Mara stood at the edge of the meadow for a moment, breathing in the scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers. She moved slowly, her feet sinking slightly into the soft earth as she walked. The meadow stretched out before her, vast and endless, its beauty filling her with a sense of calm she hadn't known she needed. It was in these quiet moments, when the world seemed to pause, that Mara felt most connected to something greater than herself. The wildness of the meadow, with its untamed growth and quiet resilience, mirrored something deep within her. As she wandered deeper into the meadow, she found herself drawn once again to the small stream that cut through the landscape. The water, clear and cold, wound its way through the grass, its soft murmur blending with the sounds of the wind and the distant calls of birds. Mara knelt beside the stream, her fingers dipping into the cool water, feeling the steady flow of the current against her skin. The sun had climbed higher in the sky now, its warmth beginning to chase away the lingering coolness of the morning. The meadow was alive with the sounds of spring, the soft hum of bees busy at their work, the rustle of the grass as the wind passed through it. Mara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the peacefulness of the scene wash over her. Unbeknownst to her, Adam had also found himself drawn to the meadow that morning. His visits, though less frequent than Mara's, had become a quiet ritual, a way of grounding himself in the changing world around him. He had never been one to dwell on the complexities of life, preferring instead the simple, steady rhythm of his routines. But there was something about the meadow, something about the way it seemed to exist outside of time, that called to him. He had risen early that morning, just as the first light of dawn had begun to touch the sky. His house, much like the town itself, was quiet, its walls filled with the kind of stillness that comes with solitude. Adam had always found comfort in this stillness, in the quiet spaces of his life where he could simply be. But as spring arrived, with its promise of new beginnings, he felt a restlessness stirring within him, a pull toward something he couldn't quite name. And so, he had set out for the meadow once again, his steps slow and deliberate as he made his way along the path. The trees, now in full bloom, cast long shadows across the ground, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. As he neared the edge of the meadow, he paused for a moment, taking in the sight before him. In the distance, he saw Mara, her figure small against the vastness of the landscape. She was kneeling by the stream, her hands resting in the water, her head tilted slightly toward the sky. There was a stillness about her, a quiet grace that seemed to blend seamlessly with the land around her. Adam watched her for a moment, his breath steady, his thoughts quiet. He didn't approach her, didn't want to break the spell of the moment. Instead, he lingered at the edge of the trees, his gaze following her as she moved through the meadow. There was something comforting in the knowledge that she, too, found peace in this place, that the meadow had become a sanctuary for both of them. As the morning wore on, the sun climbed higher, casting a golden light over the landscape. The wind picked up slightly, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and fresh earth. Mara stood from the stream, her hands dripping with cool water, and began to make her way back through the meadow. Her steps were slow, unhurried, as if she had all the time in the world. Adam watched her as she passed beneath the blossoming trees, her figure framed by the soft pink petals that drifted down from the branches. There was something about the scene that felt timeless, as if it could have been happening 100 years ago or 100 years into the future, and it would still carry the same quiet beauty. As Mara disappeared into the woods, Adam remained where he stood, his gaze lingering on the spot where she had been. There was a sense of peace in the air, a quiet certainty that something was unfolding between them, though neither of them could yet name it. It was as if the meadow itself had become a witness to the silent connection that was growing between them, a connection that existed without words, without the need for explanation. The day continued on, the sun casting long shadows across the meadow as it dipped lower in the sky. Adam, his thoughts quiet and his heart full, turned and made his way back along the path. The world felt different somehow, though nothing tangible had changed. The meadow, with its wildflowers and blossoming trees, had become more than just a place. It had become a reflection of something deeper, something unspoken. As the evening settled in, and the sky turned shades of pink and orange, the meadow remained, bathed in the soft glow of the fading light. The trees, heavy with blossoms, swayed gently in the breeze, their petals falling like whispers of a promise yet to be fulfilled. Chapter 5. The Seasons Dance. The days began to stretch longer as spring deepened, the earth responding with an explosion of life that colored every corner of the small town and the meadow at its edge. The seasons seemed to settle into a rhythm now, with each sunrise bringing more warmth, each sunset lingering just a little longer. The meadow, in its quiet, subtle way, mirrored this slow transformation, becoming a lush tapestry of wild growth and natural beauty. For Mara, the meadow had become a second home, a place where she could lose herself in the peaceful solitude of nature. She returned each day, her steps light as she wandered its paths, her heart drawn to the same familiar corners where she could sit, observe, and simply be. The passage of time in the meadow felt different. There was no rush, no sense of urgency. Just the slow, steady movement of the wind, the shifting light, and the unspoken rhythms of life. One late afternoon, as the sky began to take on the golden hue of the approaching evening, Mara found herself standing on the crest of a small hill within the meadow. The breeze that drifted through the tall grass carried with it the scents of the earth, rich soil, blooming flowers, and the unmistakable freshness that only spring could bring. She stood still for a moment, letting the wind swirl around her, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. From this vantage point, she could see the entire expanse of the meadow, stretching out like an endless sea of green, punctuated by the occasional bursts of wildflowers in hues of yellow, purple, and white. The trees that bordered the meadow were in full bloom, their branches heavy with pale pink blossoms that swayed gently in the wind. In the distance, the stream that cut through the meadow sparkled in the sunlight, its clear waters reflecting the blue of the sky. Mara slowly descended the hill, her feet carrying her toward the stream once again. The sound of the water, soft and constant, had a way of calming her, of quieting the thoughts that sometimes swirled too fast in her mind. She knelt beside the stream, her fingers trailing through the cool water, watching as the gentle current carried small leaves and petals downstream. It was a simple thing, but in that moment, it felt like everything. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the meadow, Mara sat by the stream, her legs tucked beneath her, watching the changing light. The air was still, save for the occasional rustle of the wind through the grass and the distant call of a bird high in the trees. There was a profound sense of peace here, as if the meadow itself was breathing in sync with the earth, slow and steady, a rhythm that Mara had come to know well. Across the meadow, Adam had found his way to the same path he had taken so many times before. His steps were quiet as he walked through the tall grass, his gaze drifting over the familiar landscape. There was something about the meadow that had drawn him back again and again, something he couldn't quite name, but that he felt deeply. Perhaps it was the simplicity of the place, the way it seemed to exist outside of time, unchanged by the world beyond its borders. As he walked, Adam's thoughts were quiet, his mind drifting along with the wind that moved through the meadow. He had never been one for introspection, had always preferred action over contemplation. But here, in the meadow, there was a different kind of clarity, one that came not from thinking, but from simply being. The sun was beginning to set now, its light turning golden as it stretched across the horizon. Adam's steps slowed as he reached the edge of the stream, his gaze falling on the figure sitting by the water's edge. He hadn't expected to see her here, though in truth, he wasn't surprised. Mara had become as much a part of the meadow as the trees and the wildflowers, her presence woven into the fabric of the land itself. He stood at a distance for a moment, watching as Mara dipped her fingers into the water, her movements slow and deliberate. There was a quiet grace about her, a stillness that seemed to mirror the peace of the meadow itself. Adam didn't move closer. He didn't want to disturb the tranquility of the moment. Instead, he stood beneath one of the blossoming trees, his hands resting in his pockets, his gaze soft as he took in the scene before him. As the light began to fade, casting the meadow in hues of pink and orange, Mara stood from her place by the stream. She turned slowly, her eyes lifting to the sky, watching as the first stars began to appear, faint and flickering against the deepening blue. There was a softness to the evening, a gentle hush that fell over the land as day gave way to night. Mara's steps were unhurried as she began to make her way back through the meadow, her path illuminated by the last rays of the setting sun. The air had grown cooler now, and the scent of the wildflowers had deepened, mingling with the earthy smell of the damp grass. As she walked, the wind picked up slightly, carrying with it the soft whisper of the trees and the distant hum of the stream. Adam remained where he was, watching as Mara disappeared into the fading light, her figure growing smaller and smaller until she was no longer visible. There was a sense of something unspoken between them, a quiet understanding that had grown in the spaces between their shared moments in the meadow. It was as if the land itself had become a part of their connection, weaving their lives together in ways neither of them could fully comprehend. As the evening deepened and the stars began to fill the sky, Adam turned and made his way back through the meadow, his thoughts quiet, his heart full. There was a comfort in the knowledge that they would both return to this place again, drawn by the same invisible thread that had brought them here time and time again. The meadow, with its wildflowers and blossoming trees, had become more than just a sanctuary. It had become a part of them, a place where the unspoken connection between Mara and Adam could grow and deepen without the need for words. And so, as the night settled in and the last light of the day faded from the sky, the meadow remained, a quiet witness to the unfolding of their story. The wind, ever present, whispered through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of something timeless, something that belonged to the earth and to them. Chapter 6. Under the canopy of stars. Night fell gently over the town and the meadow beyond, the sky shifting from the soft hues of dusk to the deep velvet of twilight. The meadow, so full of life and movement in the daylight, now lay quiet, its features softened by the dimming light. The wind that had carried the scents of wildflowers and fresh grass through the air all day had stilled, leaving only the faintest rustle of leaves in the trees that bordered the field. Mara lay awake in her small, comfortable house, her mind still lingering in the meadow even as the day had come to a close. The peacefulness she found there stayed with her long after she left, a quiet comfort that filled the otherwise empty corners of her life. The meadow had a way of grounding her, of reminding her that there was beauty in the world even in the quietest of places, even in the stillness of her own solitude. The night air carried the faint smell of damp earth and wildflowers through her open window, and Mara found herself drawn to the outdoors once more. She had always felt more at peace under the open sky, whether it was bathed in sunlight or blanketed by the stars. Tonight, the stars seemed particularly bright, their light cutting through the darkness in a way that felt both familiar and mysterious. She rose from her bed, wrapping herself in a light shawl as she stepped outside into the cool night. The sky stretched out above her, vast and endless, filled with the glittering constellations that had long been her silent companions. Mara had always found comfort in the stars, in the way they seemed to offer a quiet permanence in an ever-changing world. Without thinking, her feet began to carry her toward the meadow once again. The path, so familiar to her now, was bathed in the faint silver light of the moon, casting long shadows across the ground. The night was quiet, save for the occasional chirp of crickets and the distant rustle of the trees in the breeze. The air was cool against her skin, the night still holding the crispness of early spring, though there was a promise of warmth in the days to come. As she entered the meadow, Mara felt the familiar sense of peace wash over her. The wide expanse of the field stretched out before her, its wildflowers and tall grass swaying gently in the night air. The moonlight cast everything in a soft, ethereal glow, and the stars above seemed to flicker in time with the faint breeze that moved through the trees. She wandered through the meadow, her steps slow and deliberate, her eyes drawn upward to the night sky. There was something about the stillness of the night, about the way the stars seemed to pulse with life even as the world slept, that filled her with a quiet sense of wonder. The meadow, too, seemed different at night, softer, quieter, as if it was resting after the vibrant energy of the day. Mara found herself drawn to a small clearing at the edge of the meadow, where the grass was shorter and the wildflowers grew in sparse clusters. Here, the trees opened up to reveal an unobstructed view of the sky, the stars above seeming to gather in clusters, their light shining down like distant lanterns. She lay down on the soft earth, her eyes fixed on the sky, her body sinking into the ground as if it was cradling her. The world felt vast and infinite in that moment, as if the boundaries of time and space had blurred, leaving only the stars and the earth and the steady rhythm of her own breathing. Mara had always found comfort in the night, in the way it seemed to offer a reprieve from the noise and movement of the day. The stars, so far away and yet so constant, had always reminded her that there was something larger than herself, something that connected her to the world in ways she couldn't quite explain. As she lay there, staring up at the sky, she felt a quiet contentment settle over her. The meadow, with its wild beauty and quiet stillness, had become a place where she could be herself, where she could let go of the worries and expectations that sometimes weighed her down. Here, under the canopy of stars, she felt small in the best possible way, like a single thread in the vast tapestry of the universe, connected to something greater than herself. Across the meadow, Adam had also found himself drawn to the night. The stillness of the evening, the coolness of the air, had a way of pulling him outside, away from the quiet of his home and into the open sky. He had always been more at ease in the outdoors, where the pressures of the world seemed to fall away, leaving only the simple beauty of nature. Tonight, as the stars shone brightly overhead, Adam had wandered toward the meadow once again. There was a pull to the place that he couldn't quite explain, a sense of belonging that he had come to associate with the wild expanse of land. The meadow had a way of grounding him, of reminding him of the simple, quiet joys in life, like the feel of the earth beneath his feet, the sound of the wind in the trees, the sight of the stars above. As he entered the meadow, Adam was struck by the quiet beauty of the scene before him. The tall grass and wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze, their forms bathed in the soft light of the moon. The sky stretched out above him, vast and endless, filled with the glittering constellations that had long been his silent companions. He walked slowly through the meadow, his steps careful and measured, his eyes drawn upward to the stars. There was something about the stillness of the night, about the way the world seemed to pause under the cover of darkness, that filled him with a sense of peace. The meadow, too, seemed different at night, softer, quieter, as if it was resting after the vibrancy of the day. As he moved through the field, Adam's gaze was drawn to the small clearing at the edge of the meadow, where the trees opened up to reveal a wide expanse of sky. He could just make out the figure of Mara, lying on the ground, her eyes fixed on the stars above. There was something about the scene that struck him, a quiet beauty in the way she seemed so at peace, so connected to the land around her. Adam didn't approach her, didn't want to disturb the quiet of the moment. Instead, he found a place nearby, where the grass was soft and the sky stretched out above him, and lay down on the earth. The coolness of the ground seeped into his skin, and he closed his eyes for a moment, letting the stillness of the night wash over him. The stars above flickered like distant lanterns, their light steady and constant against the dark canvas of the sky. Adam felt a quiet sense of wonder as he lay there, staring up at the vastness of the universe. There was something comforting in the knowledge that, no matter how small and insignificant his own life might seem in the grand scheme of things, he was connected to something larger, something timeless and eternal. As the night deepened, the stars continued their silent dance overhead, and the meadow remained a place of quiet peace, a sanctuary beneath the vast, glittering sky. Mara and Adam, though separated by distance, were united by the same sense of wonder and connection to the land. In the stillness of the night, with the earth beneath them and the stars above, they found solace in the simple beauty of the world around them. And so the night passed, the stars slowly fading as the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon. The meadow, with its wildflowers and soft grass, stood as a quiet witness to the silent connection that was growing between them, a connection that needed no words to exist. Chapter 7. The Silent Bloom. The dawn arrived gently, as if reluctant to disturb the quiet serenity of the meadow. The sky transitioned from the deep indigo of night to a soft lavender, slowly brightening as the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon. The dew clung to the wildflowers, their petals heavy with moisture that sparkled like tiny jewels in the early light. The meadow, so vibrant and full of life, began to stir once again, awakening with the day. Mara had risen with the dawn, her body attuned to the rhythms of the natural world. She stood at her window, gazing out at the soft light spreading across the town and the meadow beyond. The quiet of the morning was always her favorite time, when the world seemed suspended between night and day, and the air was filled with a kind of stillness that carried the promise of a new beginning. Today felt different, though. There was an energy in the air, a quiet anticipation that Mara couldn't quite place. She could feel it as she dressed, choosing a simple cotton dress that flowed loosely around her as she moved. Her thoughts were drawn to the meadow, as they so often were. and she felt the familiar pull to return to the place where she had found so much solace. As she stepped outside, the coolness of the morning air greeted her, brushing against her skin and carrying with it the fresh scent of grass and damp earth. The sky above was a pale blue now, streaked with the pinks and oranges of the rising sun. The town was still quiet, the streets empty, and the only sound was the faint rustling of leaves as a gentle breeze moved through the trees. Mara's steps were slow and unhurried as she made her way to the meadow, the path well-worn beneath her feet. The tall grass swayed softly in the breeze, and the wildflowers, still wet with dew, stood tall and proud, their petals opening slowly to the warmth of the sun. The meadow seemed to breathe with the arrival of the day, its every inch alive with the quiet energy of nature. She wandered through the field, her fingers brushing against the soft petals of the flowers as she passed. The meadow was in full bloom now, the wildflowers more vibrant than they had been in weeks. The colors were more intense, the yellows brighter, the purples deeper, and the whites more brilliant. It was as if the earth itself was celebrating the arrival of spring in all its glory. Mara found herself drawn to a small patch of wildflowers she hadn't noticed before, tucked away near the edge of the meadow. They were delicate, their petals a deep blue that reminded her of the sky just before nightfall. She knelt down to examine them more closely, her fingers tracing the lines of their stems, feeling the life pulsing through them. There was something beautiful about the way they had grown here, in this quiet corner of the meadow, away from the more vibrant clusters of flowers that drew the eye. As she stood, Mara felt the familiar peace of the meadow settle over her, as if the earth itself was cradling her in its embrace. The morning light bathed the landscape in a soft glow, and the wind carried the scent of flowers and fresh grass through the air. It was a moment of pure stillness, of quiet connection to the world around her, and she felt her heart swell with a sense of gratitude. Across the meadow, Adam had also risen early, his own thoughts drawn to the familiar landscape. He had always found comfort in the morning, in the way the world seemed to come alive with the first light of day. The meadow, with its wild beauty and quiet solitude, had become his sanctuary as well, a place where he could escape the noise of the world and find peace in the simplicity of nature. Adam made his way through the meadow, his steps quiet as he moved through the tall grass. The wildflowers, so vibrant in the morning light, seemed to greet him as he passed, their petals brushing against his legs. There was a kind of magic in the air, a quiet energy that filled the space with a sense of possibility, as if the meadow itself was alive with anticipation. As he walked, Adam's eyes were drawn to the same patch of wildflowers that had caught Mara's attention earlier. The deep blue of the petals stood out against the green of the grass, their color rich and vibrant in the morning sun. He knelt down to examine them, his fingers brushing lightly against the delicate petals. There was something about them that felt special, as if they were a secret gift from the earth, hidden away in this quiet corner of the meadow. Adam stood, his gaze sweeping across the meadow. The trees at the edge of the field were bathed in golden light, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. The stream, always a source of quiet comfort, sparkled in the sunlight as it wound its way through the meadow. Everything felt alive, connected in a way that went beyond words. The meadow had become more than just a place to visit. It had become a part of him, a place where he could find clarity and peace. As he continued to walk, Adam's steps led him to a familiar clearing in the center of the meadow, where the grass was shorter and the flowers grew in scattered clusters. It was a place he often found himself drawn to, a spot where he could sit and simply be. The sun was higher in the sky now, casting a warm glow over the field, and Adam felt the tension in his body begin to melt away as he sat down on the soft earth. Mara, too, had found her way to the clearing, her steps light as she moved through the tall grass. The sun warmed her skin as she walked, and she felt a sense of contentment settle over her as she entered the open space. The meadow was quiet, save for the soft rustling of the breeze through the grass and the occasional chirp of a bird in the trees. She sat down in the grass, her legs crossed beneath her, and let her gaze wander across the meadow. The flowers, the trees, the sky. It was all so beautiful, so full of life. There was a sense of harmony here, a quiet connection between the earth and the sky, the wind and the water. It was a place where time seemed to slow down, where the worries of the world fell away, leaving only the simple beauty of nature. As she sat there, Mara's thoughts drifted to the future, to the possibilities that lay ahead. The meadow had become a place of healing for her, a place where she could find peace in the midst of uncertainty. The quiet beauty of the land, the gentle rhythms of nature, had reminded her that life was always moving forward, always growing and changing, even in the stillness. Adam, seated a short distance away, felt a similar sense of calm as he watched the meadow come alive with the light of day. The wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze, their colors vibrant against the green of the grass. The trees at the edge of the field stood tall and proud, their branches heavy with blossoms. The stream, always present, whispered softly as it moved through the meadow, a quiet reminder of the constancy of nature. For a long while, they sat there, unaware of each other's presence, yet connected by the same sense of peace that the meadow provided. The silence between them was not an empty one, but a shared understanding of the beauty and stillness that surrounded them. The meadow had become their sanctuary, a place where they could find solace and connection without the need for words. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the meadow, Mara stood and began to make her way back toward the town. Adam remained seated for a moment longer, his gaze following her as she walked, though he remained unseen. There was a quiet bond between them, a connection forged in the silent beauty of the meadow, and though neither of them spoke, they both understood its significance. The meadow, with its wildflowers and soft grass, would continue to bloom, a silent witness to the unfolding of their story. Chapter 8. The Gentle Unraveling. The days lengthened as spring deepened, the once crisp mornings growing warmer, bathed in golden sunlight. The meadow, now a vibrant ocean of green and color, had transformed completely into a lush paradise. Every inch of it was alive with growth. Wildflowers painted the landscape in bright strokes, while the trees, heavy with new leaves, rustled gently in the soft wind. The earth was alive, bursting with energy, as if every blade of grass and every bloom had been waiting for this very season to announce its presence. Mara found herself returning to the meadow more often now. It was no longer just a place to escape. It had become a refuge, a place of grounding. Each time she walked along the familiar path, she felt a pull deeper into the rhythm of nature around her, the steady pulse of the earth beneath her feet, and the gentle hum of life that surrounded her. The mornings had become her favorite time to visit, though now she stayed longer, watching the gradual transition from the soft light of dawn to the warmth of midday. She relished the solitude, but it was a solitude that felt comforting, never lonely. There was something about the meadow that made her feel connected, not only to the world around her but to something within herself as well. Mara's walks had started to evolve too. She no longer wandered aimlessly but moved with purpose, seeking out certain spots where the grass grew softer or where the wildflowers clustered in a perfect harmony of colors. She had discovered hidden patches of violets, tiny but potent in their purple hues, and she would often sit among them, soaking in their beauty and the scent of the earth beneath them. This particular morning, the air was warmer than usual, carrying the first true hints of summer's approach. The sun had risen higher, its light cascading in golden beams over the town. Mara stepped out of her home and into the warm embrace of the day, her simple dress fluttering in the breeze. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling she had come to recognize as part of the unfolding of the season itself. Each new day brought with it subtle changes in the meadow. The blooms grew fuller, the grass taller, the colors richer. As she entered the meadow, the familiar sights greeted her like old friends. The wildflowers swayed in the wind, their colors blending into a perfect palette. The tall trees at the edges stood like sentinels, watching over the landscape, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. The sky above was a flawless blue, the kind that seemed to stretch on forever. She felt drawn once again to the clearing in the center of the meadow. It had become her favorite spot, a place where the world seemed to open up around her. The grass here was short and soft, inviting her to sit and linger. The wildflowers were sparse in this spot, but their presence was felt everywhere in the air, the scent of pollen and earth filling her senses. She settled herself down in the clearing, her legs stretched out in front of her, her fingers idly tracing patterns in the soft earth. The sun was warm against her skin, and the gentle breeze that moved through the meadow carried with it the whisper of life, a subtle, rhythmic pulse that made her feel deeply connected to the world around her. It wasn't long before Adam arrived at the meadow as well. His visits had become more frequent too, though he never consciously thought about why. There was something about the meadow that called to him, pulling him away from the bustle of town life and into its quiet embrace. It wasn't just the beauty of the place, though it was undeniable. It was the peace he found here, the sense of being part of something larger, something untamed and eternal. Today, he moved with a familiar ease through the meadow, the grass brushing softly against his legs as he walked. His gaze wandered over the landscape, noting the small changes that had occurred since his last visit. The flowers seemed brighter, more alive in the sunlight. The trees, their branches heavy with new growth, swayed gently in the breeze. The stream, always present, whispered quietly as it wound its way through the field, reflecting the light of the sun on its surface. As he approached the clearing, Adam's steps slowed. From a distance, he noticed a familiar figure seated in the grass, her form outlined by the sun. Mara. He had seen her here before, though they had never exchanged words. It wasn't necessary. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a quiet acknowledgement of their shared love for this place, for the meadow that had become their refuge. He paused at the edge of the clearing, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer before he turned away, giving her the space she seemed to seek. He made his way to the far side of the meadow, where the trees grew thick and the shadows danced in the sunlight. The air was cooler here, the scent of pine and fresh earth filling his senses. He found a patch of grass near the base of an old oak tree and sat down, his back resting against its sturdy trunk. From his spot beneath the tree, Adam could see the meadow stretched out before him in all its glory. The wildflowers, the tall grass, the distant stream. All of it seemed to pulse with life. The sun was higher in the sky now, its light casting long shadows across the field. He closed his eyes, allowing the warmth of the sun and the soft rustling of the leaves to wash over him. Mara, still seated in the clearing, had noticed Adam's arrival. She had seen him here before, always alone, always moving quietly through the meadow as if he, too, sought solace in its beauty. There was something comforting about his presence, though she couldn't quite explain why. It was as if they were both part of the same silent conversation, one that required no words. The hours passed quietly, the sun climbing higher in the sky as the day unfolded. The meadow, now bathed in full sunlight, was alive with color and movement. Birds flitted through the trees, their wings catching the light as they soared above the field. The wildflowers swayed in the breeze, their petals opening fully to the warmth of the day. The stream, always constant, babbled softly in the distance, its gentle flow a reminder of the steady passage of time. As the day wore on, Mara stood and began to make her way back through the meadow. Her steps were slow, unhurried, as if she wanted to hold on to the quiet peace of the place for as long as she could. She followed the familiar path that led back to town, her thoughts lingering on the beauty of the day and the quiet connection she had felt in the meadow. Adam watched her go from his spot beneath the tree, his gaze following her until she disappeared from view. He remained seated for a while longer, letting the stillness of the meadow seep into him, grounding him in the present moment. There was something about this place that made the world feel simpler, more real. It was a feeling he cherished, one that he knew he would return to again and again. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the meadow, Adam finally stood and began his own journey back to town. The meadow, now quiet and still in the fading light, seemed to hold the memory of the day in its gentle embrace. The wildflowers, the trees, the stream, all of it would be waiting for them when they returned. And return they would, drawn by the quiet beauty of the meadow and the silent connection they had found within it. Chapter 9. The Weight of the Wind. The spring days stretched longer, and with each passing moment, the meadow seemed to hold the promise of something new, something just beyond reach, yet already present in the warmth of the sun and the whisper of the wind. Mara had always been attuned to the changing seasons, but this particular spring carried with it a subtle weight, as if every gust of wind or bloom of a flower was heavy with meaning she hadn't yet grasped. Her walks to the meadow had become a daily ritual, more than just a habit now. They were a part of her life, an essential piece of her existence. Each step on the familiar path felt like a journey deeper into the essence of the world around her, a quiet communion with nature that fed her soul in ways she couldn't quite explain. The meadow had always been a place of peace for her, but now it felt like a sanctuary, a place where she could let the complexities of life fall away and simply be. The morning began with a thick fog rolling in from the hills. The air was cool and damp, the kind that clung to the skin, making everything feel slightly heavy. Mara stepped outside, the moisture in the air settling gently on her cheeks, her breath visible in small puffs as she made her way to the familiar path that led to the meadow. The fog softened the world around her, the distant trees and hills appearing as mere shadows in the gray light. There was a stillness in the air, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves as the wind passed through them. As she entered the meadow, the fog seemed to lift slightly, revealing the landscape in muted tones. The vibrant greens of the grass and the bright hues of the wildflowers were subdued under the heavy sky, their colors blending into the soft grays and blues of the morning. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fresh growth, the promise of life lingering in the air. Mara walked slowly, her eyes tracing the familiar shapes of the meadow. The wildflowers, though dulled by the fog, still stood tall, their heads swaying gently in the breeze. The trees at the far edge of the meadow were barely visible, their trunks shrouded in mist, the leaves above them rustling softly in the wind. There was something about this quiet, fog-filled morning that felt different, more contemplative, as if the world itself had slowed down to match the rhythm of her thoughts. She made her way to the center of the meadow, where the grass was short and the earth felt soft beneath her feet. Sitting down in her usual spot, she let the silence of the meadow wash over her. The only sounds were the faint rustle of the wind through the trees and the occasional chirp of a distant bird. The fog seemed to muffle everything, creating a sense of intimacy, as if the world beyond the meadow no longer existed. Mara closed her eyes, letting the cool air fill her lungs. She could feel the dampness in the air, the moisture settling on her skin, but it didn't bother her. Instead, it made her feel more present, more connected to the world around her. She stretched out her legs in the grass, her fingers lightly brushing the damp blades as they swayed with the wind. She had spent so many mornings like this, alone with her thoughts, with only the meadow and the changing sky for company. There was something about this place that calmed her, that made everything else in her life seem distant and unimportant. Here, in the stillness of the meadow, she could breathe, she could think, she could simply exist without the pressures of the outside world. The fog began to lift slowly as the morning stretched on. The sun, hidden behind the thick clouds, began to make its presence known, casting faint beams of light through the mist. The colors of the meadow began to return, the greens growing richer, the flowers standing out in sharp contrast against the gray sky. The wind picked up slightly, carrying with it the scent of the wildflowers and the fresh earth. Adam arrived at the meadow not long after. He had become a familiar presence there, his quiet figure often seen moving through the tall grass or sitting beneath the trees. Though they never spoke, Mara had grown accustomed to his presence, finding a strange comfort in the knowledge that someone else found peace in the meadow as she did. There was an unspoken connection between them, a shared understanding of the quiet beauty of this place. Adam moved slowly through the grass, his eyes scanning the landscape as he walked. The fog had lifted more now, revealing the full beauty of the meadow. The wildflowers stood out against the green grass, their petals catching the light of the sun as it broke through the clouds. He made his way to the far side of the meadow, near the stream, where the trees grew thick and the air was cooler. The sound of the water was soft, a constant whisper that added to the peaceful atmosphere of the place. He sat down near the stream, his back resting against the trunk of a large tree. From here, he could see the entire meadow stretched out before him, the wildflowers swaying in the wind, the grass bending softly as the breeze passed through it. The sun had broken fully through the clouds now, casting a warm light over the landscape, making the colors richer and more vibrant. Mara remained seated in her spot in the center of the meadow, her gaze following the movement of the wind through the grass. She could feel the sun on her skin now, its warmth slowly chasing away the chill of the morning. The world around her felt alive, pulsing with energy and life. She closed her eyes again, letting the sounds and sensations of the meadow fill her senses. Time seemed to stretch on in the meadow, the minutes blending into hours as the day moved forward. The fog had long since disappeared, replaced by clear skies and the warmth of the midday sun. The meadow, once shrouded in mist, was now alive with color and movement. The wildflowers, fully open to the sun, swayed gently in the breeze, their petals catching the light. The trees, once mere shadows in the fog, stood tall and proud, their leaves rustling softly in the wind. Mara stood after a while, brushing the grass from her dress as she prepared to leave. She took one last look at the meadow, her eyes tracing the familiar shapes of the landscape. The meadow would always be here, she knew, waiting for her to return. There was something comforting in that thought, the knowledge that this place, with all its quiet beauty, would remain unchanged. Adam watched her go from his spot near the stream, his gaze following her as she walked through the tall grass and disappeared into the trees. He remained seated for a while longer, letting the peace of the meadow wash over him. There was something about this place, something that called to him in a way he couldn't quite explain. It was more than just the beauty of the landscape. It was the feeling of being connected to something larger, something eternal. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the meadow, Adam finally stood and made his way back to town. The meadow, now bathed in the soft light of the evening, seemed to hold the memory of the day in its quiet embrace. The wildflowers, the trees, the stream, all of it would be waiting for them when they returned. And return they would, drawn by the quiet beauty of the meadow and the shared, silent connection that had grown between them. Chapter 10. The Dance of the Seasons. Spring had reached its zenith, and the meadow was in full bloom. The once fledgling buds had matured into a tapestry of color and fragrance. Every corner of the field was alive with the riotous beauty of the season. The sun, now high and unyielding, bathed the landscape in a warm, golden light that seemed to enhance the vividness of the flowers and the lushness of the grass. Mara continued her daily pilgrimage to the meadow, each visit a testament to the way the seasons shaped her understanding of life. She had come to view the meadow as a living entity, one that grew and changed with the passage of time, mirroring the shifts within her own heart and mind. The vibrant colors of the flowers and the symphony of sounds from the natural world were a constant source of inspiration and reflection. Today, the meadow was particularly alive. The tall grasses swayed in rhythm with the wind, creating waves of green that rippled across the field. The wildflowers, now in their full glory, created splashes of color against the deep green backdrop. The sky above was a clear, unblemished blue, with only a few wisps of clouds drifting lazily by. Mara walked with a renewed sense of purpose, her steps more deliberate as she made her way to her favorite spot in the center of the meadow. The ground was soft underfoot, the grass having grown tall and thick. The flowers, in their peak bloom, released a heady perfume that filled the air with sweetness. As she moved, she brushed her fingers against the delicate petals, savoring the texture and scent of each bloom. Upon reaching the clearing, she took a moment to appreciate the scene around her. The meadow seemed to be in the midst of a celebration, each flower and blade of grass participating in the grand display of spring. The sun, now directly overhead, cast a warm glow that seemed to bring the entire field to life. Mara settled into her usual spot, allowing herself to fully absorb the beauty of her surroundings. The clearing was a haven of tranquility. The grass here was short and soft, providing a comfortable place to sit. The wildflowers, though not as dense as in other parts of the meadow, still added a touch of color to the scene. Mara stretched out on the grass, her hands resting on her stomach, and looked up at the sky. The sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees that bordered the meadow, creating dappled patterns of light and shadow on the ground. The gentle breeze that rustled through the grass and flowers seemed to carry with it the whispers of the season. It was as if the wind itself was communicating the secrets of the meadow, sharing its stories with anyone willing to listen. Mara closed her eyes and allowed herself to be swept away by the sensations around her. The warmth of the sun, the softness of the grass, and the gentle caress of the breeze. Nearby, Adam arrived at the meadow, his usual sense of purpose guiding him through the tall grass. The field, vibrant and alive, welcomed him with its full splendor. The sun was now at its zenith, casting a warm, encompassing light that made the colors of the flowers even more intense. He made his way to the edge of the meadow, where the grass grew slightly shorter and the wildflowers were more sparse. Adam had always found solace in the meadow, but today there was a palpable sense of renewal in the air. The changes in the landscape seemed to reflect a shift within him, a deepening understanding of his place in the world. He walked slowly, taking in the sights and sounds of the meadow as he made his way toward the stream. The water, flowing gently, glistened in the sunlight, its surface catching the light and creating a shimmering effect that danced across the rocks and pebbles below. He settled near the stream, his back resting against the trunk of an old willow tree. The branches of the tree drooped gracefully, creating a natural canopy that offered shade from the bright sun. From this vantage point, Adam had a clear view of the entire meadow, the wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze, the grasses rippling like a living sea. The sunlight filtered through the branches, casting a mosaic of light and shadow on the ground. Mara, meanwhile, had begun to explore the meadow more thoroughly, venturing into the areas she had not yet fully discovered. She followed the path of the stream, noticing how it meandered through the field, creating small pools and eddies along its course. The water was clear and cool, the bottom visible through the gentle ripples that distorted its surface. She paused by one of the small pools, observing the way the sunlight played on the water, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced across the surface. The pool was surrounded by a ring of smooth stones, worn smooth by the flow of the water over the years. Mara sat down on the grass beside the pool, dipping her fingers into the cool water. The sensation was refreshing, the chill of the water a stark contrast to the warmth of the sun. As she continued her exploration, she discovered a patch of wildflowers she had not seen before. The flowers here were of a different variety, their petals delicate and translucent, almost ethereal in their beauty. She knelt among them, her fingers brushing against the fragile petals, feeling a deep sense of connection to the natural world around her. Adam, still seated by the stream, had noticed Mara's presence and her exploration of the meadow. Though they had not spoken, he felt a sense of kinship with her, a shared appreciation for the quiet beauty of the field. He remained where he was, content to observe the scene unfold, feeling a deep sense of peace as the day continued. The sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting a warm, golden light over the meadow. The colors of the flowers grew richer, the grasses more vibrant as the light changed. The shadows lengthened, creating a beautiful interplay of light and dark across the field. The gentle breeze continued to rustle through the grass, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and fresh earth. Mara made her way back to the clearing, her steps slow and deliberate, savoring every moment of her time in the meadow. She felt a profound sense of contentment, a quiet joy that came from being fully present in the moment. The day had been a celebration of spring, a reminder of the beauty and vitality of life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft, orange glow over the meadow, Adam stood and began his journey back to town. He took one last look at the field, the wildflowers and grasses bathed in the warm light of the evening. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would be waiting for him when he returned. Mara, too, prepared to leave, her heart full of the serenity and joy she had found in the meadow. She glanced back at the field, knowing that it would continue to change and grow with the seasons, but that its essence, the quiet beauty, the gentle peace, would always remain the same. As they both left the meadow, the evening settled over the landscape, the sky a canvas of fading colors. The meadow, now bathed in twilight, seemed to hold the memories of the day in its gentle embrace. The wildflowers, the grasses, the stream, all of it would be waiting for them, ready to welcome them back whenever they chose to return. Chapter 11. the echoes of twilight. As spring reached its zenith, the meadow stood as a testament to the season's full splendor. The days were long, and the sun's warm embrace enveloped the landscape, creating a vivid tapestry of greens, yellows, and blues. Mara and Adam's frequent visits to the meadow had become a ritual of solace and reflection, each visit deepening their connection to the tranquil beauty of the natural world. One evening, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Mara arrived at the meadow with a sense of anticipation. The sky was a brilliant canvas of oranges, pinks, and purples, casting a soft, golden light over the landscape. The meadow, now painted in the warm hues of twilight, seemed to come alive with a subtle, ethereal glow. Mara walked slowly, taking in the changing colors of the sky and the way the light transformed the meadow. The tall grasses and wildflowers, bathed in the soft light, appeared almost otherworldly. The delicate petals of the flowers glowed with a warm radiance, and the grasses shimmered as they swayed gently in the evening breeze. She made her way to her favorite spot in the center of the meadow, where the grass was soft and the view of the sky was unobstructed. As she settled into her usual position, she closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to fully absorb the beauty and tranquility of the scene. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and fresh earth. The sounds of the meadow at twilight were soothing and harmonious. The gentle rustle of the grass and the distant chirping of crickets created a calming background. Occasionally, a soft breeze would stir the leaves of the trees along the edge of the meadow, adding a subtle, rhythmic element to the natural symphony. As the sun continued its descent, the sky transformed into a deep, velvety blue, dotted with the first stars of the evening. The meadow, now bathed in the soft light of twilight, seemed to take on a new dimension. The shadows grew longer, stretching out across the field, creating a play of light and dark that added depth to the landscape. Mara's gaze wandered across the meadow, taking in the changes wrought by the fading light. The wildflowers, though no longer vibrant in the diminishing light, still held a delicate beauty, their silhouettes outlined against the darkening sky. The grasses, now a darker shade of green, whispered softly in the breeze, their movement adding a subtle, rhythmic quality to the evening. As the last traces of sunlight disappeared, the meadow was illuminated by the gentle glow of the moon. The pale light cast a serene, silvery sheen over the field, adding a touch of magic to the scene. The stars above twinkled softly, their light reflected in the dew-covered grass and the surface of the stream. Adam arrived at the meadow as the moon began its ascent into the sky. He moved quietly through the tall grass, his presence blending seamlessly with the tranquil atmosphere of the evening. The meadow, now bathed in moonlight, took on a dreamlike quality, the shadows and highlights creating a tapestry of light and dark that seemed almost otherworldly. He made his way to the edge of the meadow, where the stream flowed gently, its surface shimmering in the moonlight. The water, now illuminated by the soft glow of the moon, reflected the stars above, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow. Adam settled near the stream, his back resting against the trunk of a large tree, and gazed out over the meadow. From this vantage point, he could see the entire field, its contours softened by the moonlight. The wildflowers, though less distinct in the dim light, still added a touch of color to the scene, their shapes outlined against the darkening sky. The grasses, now a deep, muted green, swayed gently in the breeze, their movement adding a subtle rhythm to the night. Mara, still seated in her spot in the center of the meadow, felt a profound sense of peace as the evening unfolded around her. The quiet beauty of the meadow at twilight seemed to resonate with her, filling her with a deep sense of contentment. She closed her eyes again, letting the sounds and sensations of the night wash over her. As the night deepened, the meadow became a sanctuary of calm and serenity. The stars, now fully visible in the clear sky, added their own touch of magic to the scene. The moon's light, casting a soft, silvery glow over the field, created an atmosphere of quiet wonder. The breeze, carrying the scent of flowers and fresh earth, added a final touch to the night's enchantment. Mara and Adam's silent presence in the meadow was a testament to their shared appreciation for the quiet beauty of the natural world. Though they had never spoken, Their connection to the meadow and to each other was evident in the way they moved through the field, their movements in harmony with the rhythms of nature. As the hours passed and the night grew deeper, the meadow remained a place of tranquility and reflection. The moon continued its slow journey across the sky, casting its gentle light over the field. The stars, now a shimmering canopy above, added their own touch of magic to the night. Mara eventually stood, brushing the grass from her dress as she prepared to leave. She took one last look at the meadow, her heart full of the serenity and peace she had found in this place. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would always hold a special place in her heart. Adam, too, rose from his spot by the stream, his gaze lingering on the meadow as he began his journey back to town. The night, with its moonlight and stars, had cast a spell over him, filling him with a deep sense of calm and contentment. The meadow, with its tranquil beauty, would be waiting for him when he returned. As they both left the meadow, the night settled in around them, the sky a tapestry of stars and the air filled with the gentle sounds of the natural world. The meadow, now bathed in the soft glow of the moon, seemed to hold the echoes of the evening in its quiet embrace. The wildflowers, the grasses, the stream, all of it would be waiting for them, ready to welcome them back whenever they chose to return. Chapter 12. The First Blossoms of Summer. As summer approached, the meadow continued to evolve, its transformation reflecting the steady progression of the seasons. The once vibrant hues of spring had softened, making way for the lush, full greens of summer. The wildflowers that had once dominated the field had given way to a different palette, their colors more subdued but no less beautiful. The grasses had grown tall and dense, creating a sea of green that undulated with the breeze. Mara arrived at the meadow early in the morning, the first light of dawn casting a soft, golden glow over the landscape. The air was cool and crisp, filled with the scent of fresh dew and blooming flowers. The sun was still low in the sky, its light filtering through the trees along the edge of the meadow and creating long, dappled shadows on the ground. As she walked through the field, Mara noticed the changes wrought by the arrival of summer. The grasses were taller and more robust, their tips brushing against her knees as she made her way through the meadow. The wildflowers that had once been so abundant were now fewer in number, but the few that remained were more vibrant, their petals catching the early morning light and glowing softly. Mara made her way to her usual spot in the center of the meadow, where she had spent so many peaceful hours. The grass here was thick and lush, providing a comfortable place to sit. The wildflowers, though less numerous, still added a touch of color to the scene. Mara settled into her spot, taking a moment to appreciate the changes in the meadow and the way the landscape had evolved with the changing seasons. The sounds of the meadow in summer were different from those of spring. The chirping of crickets and the buzzing of bees filled the air, adding a gentle, rhythmic background to the natural symphony. The breeze was warmer, carrying with it the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint aroma of blooming flowers. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the meadow became bathed in a warm, golden light. The grasses and wildflowers sparkled with the dew that had collected overnight, creating a glistening effect that made the field seem to shimmer in the sunlight. Mara lay back on the grass, allowing herself to fully immerse in the beauty and serenity of the scene. Nearby, Adam arrived at the meadow, his steps measured and deliberate as he made his way through the tall grass. The field, now in the full embrace of summer, welcomed him with its lush greenery and warm, golden light. He moved toward the edge of the meadow, where the stream flowed gently, its surface reflecting the sunlight and creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow. Adam settled by the stream, his back resting against the trunk of a large oak tree. The tree's branches provided a canopy of shade, offering respite from the heat of the sun. From this vantage point, he had a clear view of the meadow, the grasses and wildflowers stretching out in all directions. The sunlight filtering through the leaves of the tree created a dappled pattern on the ground, adding a touch of magic to the scene. Mara continued to explore the meadow, her curiosity piqued by the changes brought about by the arrival of summer. She ventured toward a part of the field she had not previously explored, discovering a patch of wildflowers that had bloomed late. The flowers here were different from those she had seen earlier, their petals larger and their colors more muted. She knelt among the flowers, examining their delicate forms and appreciating their subtle beauty. The colors of the flowers, though not as vivid as those of spring, were rich and varied, creating a gentle, harmonious palette that blended seamlessly with the surrounding greenery. Mara spent several moments in quiet contemplation, savoring the peacefulness of the scene. As the day progressed, the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the meadow. The heat of the day made the air feel heavier, but the gentle breeze that rustled through the grasses provided a welcome relief. Mara and Adam moved through the meadow in their own silent, contemplative ways, each finding solace and inspiration in the beauty of the field. The afternoon passed slowly, the light changing as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The shadows in the meadow grew longer, stretching out across the field and creating a play of light and dark that added depth to the landscape. The warm, golden light of the late afternoon cast a soft glow over the meadow, enhancing the colors of the grasses and wildflowers. Mara and Adam eventually made their way back to their respective spots in the meadow. Mara returned to the center of the field, where she lay back on the grass and gazed up at the sky. The clouds had begun to gather, their shapes soft and billowy against the backdrop of the setting sun. The colors of the sky were rich and varied, ranging from deep oranges and pinks to soft purples and blues. Adam, still seated by the stream, watched the changing light with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The meadow, now bathed in the warm, golden hues of the evening, seemed to hold a special kind of magic. The gentle ripples of the stream, the rustle of the grass, and the distant calls of birds created a soothing, harmonious backdrop to the scene. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the meadow was transformed by the soft, muted light of twilight. The colors of the field became more subdued, the rich greens and vibrant flowers giving way to a more subdued palette of blues and grays. The stars began to appear in the sky, their light twinkling softly as the night took hold. Mara and Adam prepared to leave the meadow, each feeling a deep sense of contentment and tranquility. The day had been a celebration of summer's arrival, a reminder of the beauty and vitality of the natural world. As they left the field, the meadow, now bathed in the soft glow of twilight, seemed to hold the echoes of the day in its gentle embrace. The moon rose slowly into the sky, casting a soft, silvery light over the meadow. The wildflowers and grasses, now bathed in moonlight, seemed to take on a new dimension, their colors and shapes softened by the gentle glow. The stream, illuminated by the moon, reflected the stars above, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would be waiting for Mara and Adam when they returned. The changing seasons would continue to shape and transform the field, but the essence of the meadow, its tranquility, its serenity, and its quiet charm, would always remain the same. Chapter 13. The Whispering Winds. As summer waned and the first hints of autumn began to appear, the meadow continued its quiet transformation. The once lush greens of summer had begun to give way to the more subdued tones of fall, with hints of gold and crimson starting to emerge among the grasses and wildflowers. The air was cooler, carrying with it the crisp scent of changing leaves and the promise of a new season. Mara arrived at the meadow early in the morning, her breath forming soft clouds in the cool air. The field, now touched by the first signs of autumn, was a blend of vibrant greens and the warm hues of approaching fall. The grasses were starting to turn golden, and the wildflowers, though fewer in number, were beginning to take on richer, deeper colors. The sun had just risen, casting a soft, golden light over the meadow. The early morning light filtered through the trees at the edge of the field, creating a play of light and shadow that danced across the landscape. Mara made her way to her usual spot in the center of the meadow, where she had spent many peaceful hours. As she settled onto the grass, she noticed the changes that had come with the approaching autumn. The wildflowers, though still beautiful, were now in their final stages of bloom. Their colors had deepened, with rich reds, oranges, and purples creating a vibrant mosaic against the backdrop of the fading summer greens. The grasses, too, had begun to turn golden, their tall stalks swaying gently in the morning breeze. Mara lay back on the grass, allowing herself to absorb the beauty and serenity of the meadow in its autumnal state. The air was crisp and cool, carrying with it the scent of earth and leaves. The sounds of the meadow were different from those of summer. The chirping of crickets had faded, replaced by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant calls of migrating birds. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the meadow came alive with the gentle warmth of the morning. The golden light illuminated the field, casting a soft, warm glow over the grasses and flowers. Mara watched as the light played across the landscape, creating a tapestry of shifting colors and shadows. As the day progressed, the meadow continued to change. The light shifted, creating new patterns and highlighting different aspects of the field. The grasses and wildflowers, now bathed in the warm light of midday, seemed to take on a new dimension. The golden hues of the grasses and the deep colors of the flowers created a rich, textured landscape that was both beautiful and calming. Nearby, Adam arrived at the meadow, his presence blending seamlessly with the tranquility of the scene. The cool morning air and the changing colors of the field created a serene backdrop for his quiet reflection. He made his way to the edge of the meadow, where the stream flowed gently, its surface reflecting the warm light of the sun. Adam settled by the stream, the coolness of the water providing a refreshing contrast to the warm air. The stream, with its gently rippling surface, seemed to capture the essence of the changing season. The light dancing on the water created a mesmerizing pattern of shimmering reflections, adding a touch of magic to the scene. Mara continued to explore the meadow, her curiosity piqued by the changes brought about by the approaching autumn. She ventured to a part of the field she had not yet explored, discovering a grove of trees that had begun to change color. The leaves of the trees, now a mix of gold, orange, and red, created a vibrant canopy that contrasted beautifully with the remaining green of the meadow. She walked among the trees, their branches stretching out overhead and creating a natural archway that seemed to invite her further into the grove. The ground was covered with a thick layer of fallen leaves, their colors creating a soft, crunchy carpet underfoot. Mara knelt to examine the leaves, appreciating their rich, varied colors and the delicate patterns created by their veins. As the afternoon progressed, the light in the meadow began to change, shifting from the warm tones of midday to the cooler hues of late afternoon. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast longer shadows across the field, creating a play of light and dark that added depth to the landscape. The golden light of the late afternoon enhanced the colors of the grasses and wildflowers, creating a rich, warm glow. Mara and Adam, each in their own part of the meadow, continued to experience the changing light and the evolving beauty of the field. The quiet beauty of the meadow in autumn was a reminder of the passage of time and the subtle changes that came with each season. The air was filled with the whispers of the wind, carrying with it the scent of falling leaves and the promise of cooler days ahead. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the colors of the meadow deepened, with rich shades of orange, red, and gold creating a stunning visual display. The shadows lengthened, stretching out across the field and creating a dramatic contrast with the warm light of the setting sun. The sky, now painted with hues of pink, purple, and orange, provided a breathtaking backdrop to the scene. Mara and Adam, their time in the meadow coming to an end, prepared to leave. The day had been a celebration of the changing seasons, a reminder of the beauty and serenity that could be found in the natural world. The meadow, now bathed in the soft, muted light of twilight, seemed to hold the echoes of the day in its gentle embrace. As night fell, the meadow was illuminated by the soft glow of the moon. The light of the moon, casting a silvery sheen over the field, added a touch of magic to the scene. The stars began to appear in the sky, their light twinkling softly and reflecting in the surface of the stream. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would continue to evolve as the seasons changed. The whispers of the wind, the rustle of the leaves, and the soft light of the moon would be waiting for Mara and Adam when they returned. The meadow, with its tranquil charm and timeless allure, would always hold a special place in their hearts. Chapter 14. The Harvest Moon. As the days grew shorter and the air grew cooler, the meadow embraced the full splendor of autumn. The once vibrant greens and summer hues had transformed into a tapestry of rich reds, golds, and oranges. The meadow, now in the heart of fall, was a celebration of the changing seasons, each leaf and blade of grass reflecting the deep, warm colors of the harvest. Mara arrived at the meadow early in the morning, her breath visible in the crisp, cool air. The field, now a mosaic of autumnal colors, greeted her with a sense of quiet splendor. The grasses had turned a soft, golden brown, and the wildflowers had mostly disappeared, replaced by the more subtle hues of fall. The early morning light filtered through the trees at the edge of the meadow, casting long, dappled shadows across the field. Mara made her way to her usual spot in the center of the meadow, where she had spent so many peaceful hours. The ground was covered in a thick layer of fallen leaves, their colors creating a vibrant carpet that crunched softly underfoot. As she settled onto the grass, Mara took in the beauty of the meadow in its autumnal state. The air was crisp and cool, carrying with it the scent of earth and fallen leaves. The sounds of the meadow were different from those of summer. The chirping of crickets had faded, replaced by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant calls of migrating birds. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the meadow came alive with the warmth of the morning light. The golden rays illuminated the field, casting a soft, warm glow over the grasses and leaves. The light played across the landscape, creating a beautiful interplay of color and shadow that enhanced the beauty of the scene. Nearby, Adam arrived at the meadow, his steps measured and deliberate as he made his way through the field. The cool morning air and the vibrant colors of autumn created a serene backdrop for his quiet reflection. He made his way to the edge of the meadow, where the stream flowed gently, its surface reflecting the warm light of the sun. Adam settled by the stream, the coolness of the water providing a refreshing contrast to the warm air. The stream, with its gently rippling surface, seemed to capture the essence of the changing season. The light dancing on the water created a mesmerizing pattern of shimmering reflections, adding a touch of magic to the scene. Mara continued to explore the meadow, her curiosity piqued by the changes brought about by the approaching winter. She ventured to a part of the field she had not yet explored, discovering a grove of trees that had reached the peak of their autumnal splendor. The leaves of the trees, now a brilliant mix of gold, orange, and red, created a stunning canopy that contrasted beautifully with the remaining green of the meadow. She walked among the trees, their branches stretching out overhead and creating a natural archway that seemed to invite her further into the grove. The ground was covered with a thick layer of fallen leaves, their colors creating a soft, crunchy carpet underfoot. Mara knelt to examine the leaves, appreciating their rich, varied colors and the delicate patterns created by their veins. As the day progressed, the light in the meadow began to change, shifting from the warm tones of morning to the cooler hues of late afternoon. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast longer shadows across the field, creating a play of light and dark that added depth to the landscape. The golden light of the late afternoon enhanced the colors of the grasses and leaves, creating a rich, warm glow. The air was filled with the scent of autumn, the earthy aroma of fallen leaves and the faint, sweet smell of ripening fruit. The occasional gust of wind rustled through the trees, sending a shower of leaves cascading to the ground. The colors of the meadow deepened as the sun began to set, with rich shades of orange, red, and gold creating a stunning visual display. Mara and Adam, each in their own part of the meadow, continued to experience the changing light and the evolving beauty of the field. The quiet beauty of the meadow in autumn was a reminder of the passage of time and the subtle changes that came with each season. The whispers of the wind, the rustle of the leaves, and the soft light of the setting sun created a soothing, harmonious backdrop to the scene. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the colors of the meadow shifted to softer, cooler tones. The sky, now painted with hues of pink, purple, and blue, provided a breathtaking backdrop to the field. The moon began to rise, casting a silvery light over the meadow and adding a touch of magic to the scene. Mara and Adam prepared to leave the meadow, each feeling a deep sense of contentment and tranquility. The day had been a celebration of autumn's arrival, a reminder of the beauty and serenity that could be found in the natural world. The meadow, now bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, seemed to hold the echoes of the day in its gentle embrace. The moonlight illuminated the field, casting long, ethereal shadows and creating a serene, almost otherworldly atmosphere. The wildflowers and grasses, now bathed in moonlight, took on a new dimension, their colors and shapes softened by the gentle glow. The stream, illuminated by the moon, reflected the stars above, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow. As the night deepened, the meadow was enveloped in a tranquil stillness. The only sounds were the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would continue to evolve as the seasons changed. The whispers of the wind, the rustle of the leaves, and the soft light of the moon would be waiting for Mara and Adam when they returned. The meadow, with its tranquil charm and timeless allure, would always hold a special place in their hearts. The changing seasons would continue to shape and transform the field, but the essence of the meadow, its tranquility, its serenity, and its quiet beauty, would remain constant. Chapter 15. The Fading Light. The meadow, now fully immersed in the depths of autumn, was a tapestry of rich, deep colors and fading light. The once vibrant hues of summer and early fall had given way to the more muted, somber tones of late autumn. The grasses were a mix of brown and gold, and the last of the wildflowers had withered, leaving only the occasional burst of color among the fallen leaves. Mara arrived at the meadow early in the morning, the chill in the air signaling the approach of winter. The field, now covered in a blanket of fallen leaves, was a patchwork of browns and golds. The trees that lined the edge of the meadow stood tall and bare, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers against the pale sky. The early morning light was soft and diffused, casting a gentle glow over the landscape. The sun, still low on the horizon, struggled to penetrate the thick layer of clouds that covered the sky. The light that did manage to filter through created a muted, almost ethereal quality to the scene. Mara made her way to her usual spot in the center of the meadow, where she had spent countless hours over the past seasons. The ground was covered in a thick layer of fallen leaves, their colors creating a soft, crunchy carpet underfoot. The air was crisp and cool, carrying with it the scent of earth and decaying leaves. As she settled onto the grass, Mara took in the beauty of the meadow in its late autumn state. The once vibrant colors of fall had faded, leaving behind a more subdued, somber palette. The grasses and leaves were now a mix of browns and golds, creating a landscape that was both beautiful and melancholic. Nearby, Adam arrived at the meadow, his presence blending seamlessly with the quiet, reflective atmosphere of the field. The chill in the air and the muted colors of late autumn created a serene backdrop for his contemplation. He made his way to the edge of the meadow, where the stream flowed gently, its surface reflecting the pale light of the overcast sky. Adam settled by the stream, the coolness of the water providing a refreshing contrast to the crisp air. The stream, with its gently rippling surface, seemed to capture the essence of the fading light. The light dancing on the water created a soft, shimmering effect that added a touch of magic to the scene. Mara continued to explore the meadow, her curiosity piqued by the changes brought about by the approaching winter. She ventured to a part of the field she had not yet explored, discovering a grove of trees that had lost most of their leaves. The bare branches created a stark, almost haunting silhouette against the gray sky. She walked among the trees, their bare branches reaching out overhead and creating a natural archway that seemed to invite her deeper into the grove. The ground was covered with a thick layer of fallen leaves, their colors muted and faded. Mara knelt to examine the leaves, appreciating their delicate patterns and the soft, rustling sound they made as the wind stirred them. As the day progressed, the light in the meadow continued to fade, shifting from the soft glow of morning to the cooler hues of late afternoon. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast long, dramatic shadows across the field, creating a play of light and dark that added depth to the landscape. The golden light of the afternoon was subdued, creating a more somber, reflective mood. The air was filled with the scent of autumn, the earthy aroma of fallen leaves and the faint, crisp smell of approaching winter. The occasional gust of wind rustled through the trees, sending a shower of leaves cascading to the ground. The colors of the meadow deepened as the sun began to set, with rich shades of brown and gold creating a stunning visual display. Mara and Adam, each in their own part of the meadow, continued to experience the changing light and the evolving beauty of the field. The quiet beauty of the meadow in late autumn was a reminder of the passage of time and the subtle changes that came with each season. The whispers of the wind, the rustle of the leaves, and the soft light of the setting sun created a soothing, contemplative backdrop to the scene. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the colors of the meadow shifted to cooler, more muted tones. The sky, now painted with hues of gray and blue, provided a gentle backdrop to the field. The moon began to rise, casting a soft, silvery light over the meadow and adding a touch of magic to the scene. Mara and Adam prepared to leave the meadow, each feeling a deep sense of tranquility and reflection. The day had been a poignant reminder of autumn's fading beauty, a reflection of the passage of time and the inevitable approach of winter. The meadow, now bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, seemed to hold the echoes of the day in its gentle embrace. The moonlight illuminated the field, casting long, ethereal shadows and creating a serene, almost otherworldly atmosphere. The bare branches of the trees and the fallen leaves, now bathed in moonlight, took on a new dimension, their shapes and textures softened by the gentle glow. The stream, illuminated by the moon, reflected the stars above, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow. As night fell, the meadow was enveloped in a tranquil stillness. The only sounds were the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would continue to evolve as the seasons changed. The fading light of autumn, the soft whispers of the wind, and the serene glow of the moon would be waiting for Mara and Adam when they returned. The meadow, with its tranquil charm and timeless allure, would always hold a special place in their hearts. The changing seasons would continue to shape and transform the field, but the essence of the meadow, its tranquility, its serenity, and its quiet beauty, would remain constant. Chapter 16. The First Frost. Winter's breath had begun to settle over the meadow, transforming it into a landscape of frost and stillness. The vibrant colors of autumn were now a distant memory, replaced by the quiet purity of early winter. The grasses, once golden and lush, were now coated in a delicate layer of frost, their tops shimmering like tiny diamonds in the pale light. Mara arrived at the meadow early in the morning, her steps crunching softly on the frosted ground. The field, now blanketed in a thin layer of ice, was a study in contrasts. The once vivid colors of fall had faded into a monochromatic palette of whites and grays. The trees at the edge of the meadow stood tall and bare, their branches outlined against the pale, winter sky. The early morning light was pale and diffuse, casting a soft glow over the landscape. The sun, struggling to pierce through the thick blanket of clouds, created a muted, ethereal light that bathed the meadow in a gentle, silvery hue. The frost-covered grass sparkled in the soft light, creating a magical, almost otherworldly effect. Mara made her way to her usual spot in the center of the meadow, where the transformation of the field into a winter wonderland was most evident. The ground was covered in a thin layer of frost, which crunched softly underfoot. The once lush grasses were now encased in a delicate layer of ice, their blades bending under the weight of the frost. As she settled onto the ground, Mara took in the serene beauty of the meadow in its winter state. The air was crisp and cold, carrying with it the faint scent of snow and the promise of a coming storm. The sounds of the meadow were muffled, with the usual rustling of leaves replaced by the soft crunching of frost and the occasional distant call of a bird. Nearby, Adam arrived at the meadow, his presence blending seamlessly with the tranquil, wintry scene. The cool, frosted air and the muted colors of the field created a serene backdrop for his quiet contemplation. He made his way to the edge of the meadow, where the stream flowed gently, its surface partially frozen and creating a delicate pattern of ice and water. Adam settled by the stream, the coldness of the water contrasting with the crisp air. The stream, with its partially frozen surface, seemed to capture the essence of early winter. The ice formed intricate patterns on the water's surface, adding a touch of delicate beauty to the scene. Mara continued to explore the meadow, her curiosity piqued by the changes brought about by the arrival of winter. She ventured to a part of the field she had not yet explored, discovering a grove of trees that had been transformed by the frost. The bare branches of the trees were coated in a delicate layer of ice, creating a crystalline canopy that glistened in the pale light. She walked among the trees, their frost-covered branches reaching out overhead and creating a shimmering archway that seemed to invite her deeper into the grove. The ground was covered with a thin layer of frost, which crackled softly underfoot. Mara knelt to examine the frost on the branches, appreciating the delicate patterns and the intricate beauty of the ice crystals. As the day progressed, the light in the meadow shifted, moving from the soft, diffused glow of morning to the cooler, more subdued tones of late afternoon. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast long, faint shadows across the field, creating a play of light and dark that added depth to the winter landscape. The frost-covered grasses and trees glowed softly in the pale light, their colors and shapes enhanced by the cold, clear air. The air was filled with the crisp scent of winter, the cool aroma of frost and the faint, clean smell of snow. The occasional gust of wind stirred the frost, sending a gentle shower of ice crystals cascading to the ground. The colors of the meadow deepened as the sun began to set, with the pale light creating a subtle, almost ethereal glow. Mara and Adam, each in their own part of the meadow, continued to experience the changing light and the evolving beauty of the field. The quiet beauty of the meadow in early winter was a reminder of the passage of time and the subtle changes that came with each season. The whispers of the wind, the crunching of frost, and the soft light of the setting sun created a soothing, contemplative backdrop to the scene. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the colors of the meadow shifted to cooler, more muted tones. The sky, now painted with hues of gray and blue, provided a gentle backdrop to the field. The moon began to rise, casting a soft, silvery light over the meadow and adding a touch of magic to the scene. Mara and Adam prepared to leave the meadow, each feeling a deep sense of tranquility and reflection. The day had been a poignant reminder of winter's arrival, a reflection of the beauty and serenity that could be found in the cold, still landscape. The meadow, now bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, seemed to hold the echoes of the day in its gentle embrace. The moonlight illuminated the field, casting long, ethereal shadows and creating a serene, almost otherworldly atmosphere. The frost-covered grasses and trees, now bathed in moonlight, took on a new dimension, their shapes and textures softened by the gentle glow. The stream, illuminated by the moon, reflected the stars above, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow. As night fell, the meadow was enveloped in a tranquil stillness. The only sounds were the soft crunching of frost underfoot and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would continue to evolve as the seasons changed. The first frost of winter, the soft whispers of the wind, and the serene glow of the moon would be waiting for Mara and Adam when they returned. The meadow, with its tranquil charm and timeless allure, would always hold a special place in their hearts. The changing seasons would continue to shape and transform the field, but the essence of the meadow, its tranquility, its serenity, and its quiet beauty, would remain constant. Chapter 17. The Winter Solstice. The meadow lay in a deep slumber under the heavy blanket of winter, its once familiar contours now softened and muted beneath the snow. The transformation was complete. The vibrant colors of autumn and the delicate frost of early winter had given way to a serene landscape of white, punctuated only by the occasional dark silhouette of a tree or the hint of a distant hill. Mara arrived at the meadow at dawn, the world still enveloped in the soft, pre-dawn darkness. The sky was a deep shade of indigo, slowly lightening as the first hints of the sun began to appear on the horizon. The snow-covered field stretched out before her, pristine and untouched, save for her own footprints, which crunched softly with each step. The early morning light was soft and pale, casting a gentle glow over the snow-covered landscape. The sun, still low in the sky, struggled to penetrate the thick layer of clouds that covered the heavens. The light that did manage to filter through was diffused and delicate, bathing the meadow in a serene, ethereal glow. Mara made her way to the center of the meadow, where the blanket of snow was deep and undisturbed. The snow crunched softly underfoot, each step creating a subtle sound that seemed to echo through the stillness of the field. The once lush grasses were now completely buried beneath the snow, their presence only hinted at by the slight undulations in the white blanket. As she settled onto the snow-covered ground, Mara took in the stark beauty of the meadow in its winter state. The cold, crisp air was filled with the faint scent of snow and the distant aroma of pine from the surrounding forest. The usual sounds of the meadow were muted, replaced by the soft whispers of the wind and the occasional distant call of a bird braving the winter chill. Nearby, Adam arrived at the meadow, his presence blending seamlessly with the quiet, wintry scene. The stark whiteness of the snow and the muted colors of the landscape created a serene backdrop for his contemplation. He made his way to the edge of the meadow, where the partially frozen stream flowed gently, its surface now a mix of ice and open water. Adam settled by the stream, the coldness of the water contrasting with the icy air. The stream, with its partially frozen surface, seemed to embody the essence of the winter solstice. The ice formed intricate patterns on the water, creating delicate, crystalline designs that sparkled in the soft light. Mara continued to explore the meadow, her curiosity piqued by the deepening winter. She ventured to a part of the field she had not yet explored, discovering a grove of trees that had been transformed by the snow. The bare branches of the trees were now heavily laden with snow, creating a heavy, white canopy that glistened in the pale light. She walked among the trees, their snow-covered branches reaching out overhead and creating a delicate archway that seemed to invite her further into the grove. The ground was covered with a thick layer of snow, which yielded softly underfoot. Mara knelt to examine the snow on the branches, appreciating the intricate patterns and the delicate beauty of the snowflakes. As the day progressed, the light in the meadow shifted, moving from the soft glow of morning to the more intense brightness of midday. The sun, now higher in the sky, cast long, stark shadows across the field, creating a play of light and dark that added depth to the winter landscape. The snow-covered grasses and trees glowed softly in the bright sunlight, their shapes and textures enhanced by the clear, cold air. The air was filled with the crisp scent of snow, the cool aroma of freshly fallen flakes, and the faint, clean smell of winter. The occasional gust of wind stirred the snow, sending a gentle shower of flakes cascading to the ground. The colors of the meadow deepened as the sun reached its zenith, with the bright white of the snow creating a stunning visual display. Mara and Adam, each in their own part of the meadow, continued to experience the changing light and the evolving beauty of the field. The quiet beauty of the meadow at the winter solstice was a reminder of the passage of time and the subtle changes that came with each season. The whispers of the wind, the crunching of snow, and the bright light of midday created a soothing, contemplative backdrop to the scene. As the day began to wane, the colors of the meadow shifted to cooler, more subdued tones. The sky, now painted with hues of pale blue and gray, provided a gentle backdrop to the field. The sun began its slow descent, casting long, soft shadows across the snow-covered landscape and creating a serene, almost magical atmosphere. Mara and Adam prepared to leave the meadow, each feeling a deep sense of peace and reflection. The day had been a poignant reminder of the winter solstice, a reflection of the beauty and serenity that could be found in the cold, still landscape. The meadow, now bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, seemed to hold the echoes of the day in its gentle embrace. The setting sun illuminated the field, casting long, ethereal shadows and creating a serene, almost otherworldly atmosphere. The snow-covered grasses and trees, now bathed in the warm glow of the sun, took on a new dimension, their shapes and textures softened by the fading light. The stream, illuminated by the low sun, reflected the colors of the sky, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow. As night fell, the meadow was enveloped in a tranquil stillness. The only sounds were the soft crunching of snow underfoot and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would continue to evolve as the seasons changed. The winter solstice, the soft whispers of the wind, and the serene glow of the setting sun would be waiting for Mara and Adam when they returned. The meadow, with its tranquil charm and timeless allure, would always hold a special place in their hearts. The changing seasons would continue to shape and transform the field, but the essence of the meadow, its tranquility, its serenity, and its quiet beauty, would remain constant. Chapter 18. The First Snowfall. The meadow was a pristine canvas, untouched by human presence and awaiting the gentle touch of winter's first snowfall. The morning dawned cold and clear, with a sharp, invigorating chill in the air that hinted at the arrival of snow. The sky was a pale, frosty blue, gradually lightening as the first rays of the sun began to reach the horizon. Mara arrived at the meadow before dawn, her breath visible in the crisp, cold air. The landscape, already bathed in the soft light of early morning, was a study in shades of gray and white. The trees, stripped of their autumnal decorations, stood tall and stark against the pale sky, their branches reaching out like bare fingers toward the heavens. As she made her way into the meadow, Mara could feel the anticipation in the air, the quiet expectancy of a world waiting for the snowfall to begin. The ground was covered in a thin layer of frost, which crunched softly under her boots. The snow that had begun to fall during the night was still light and sparse, forming delicate flakes that settled gently on the ground. Mara walked slowly through the meadow, her movements deliberately measured to avoid disturbing the serene beauty of the scene. The snowflakes began to fall more steadily, their descent slow and graceful. Each flake seemed to catch the light, creating a soft, shimmering effect as they drifted down from the sky. The meadow was transformed by the falling snow, each flake adding to the blanket that slowly covered the landscape. The grasses, once golden and green, were now hidden beneath the soft, white layer of snow. The trees, with their bare branches now dusted with snow, looked like they had been dipped in sugar. As the snowfall continued, the meadow was enveloped in a quiet, otherworldly stillness. The usual sounds of the field, the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds, were muffled by the thickening blanket of snow. The only sound was the gentle patter of snowflakes falling and the occasional soft crunch of snow underfoot. Nearby, Adam arrived at the edge of the meadow, his presence blending seamlessly with the tranquil, snowy scene. The snowfall had intensified, creating a soft, white haze that added to the ethereal quality of the landscape. He made his way to the partially frozen stream, which was now partially obscured by the growing snow. The water, still visible in places, reflected the soft, diffused light of the falling snow. Adam settled by the stream, watching as the snow continued to fall, its accumulation slowly covering the icy surface of the water. The stream, now partially hidden beneath the snow, seemed to merge with the surrounding landscape, creating a seamless, tranquil scene. Mara continued her exploration of the meadow, her path marked by the trail of her footprints in the fresh snow. She ventured toward the grove of trees she had discovered previously, now transformed by the snowfall. The trees, with their branches heavy with snow, created a picturesque winter wonderland. The snow-covered branches formed a delicate canopy overhead, filtering the soft, diffused light and creating a serene, magical effect. She walked among the trees, the snow crunching softly beneath her feet. The air was filled with the clean, crisp scent of snow and the faint aroma of pine from the surrounding forest. The silence of the grove was profound, broken only by the occasional soft rustle of snow falling from the branches. As the snowfall continued, the meadow became increasingly blanketed in white. The snow-covered landscape was a study in contrasts, the stark whiteness of the snow against the dark silhouettes of the trees and the subtle variations in the snow's texture and depth created a visually stunning scene. The sky, now fully overcast, cast a soft, diffused light over the meadow. The sun, hidden behind a thick layer of clouds, created a muted, gentle glow that illuminated the snow-covered field. The snow continued to fall steadily, its accumulation creating a thick, soft layer that enveloped the landscape. As the day progressed, the snowfall intensified, creating a sense of timelessness and stillness in the meadow. The light, now more subdued, added to the serene and peaceful atmosphere. The snow-covered landscape was a tranquil, almost otherworldly scene, its beauty heightened by the steady, gentle snowfall. Mara and Adam, each in their own part of the meadow, experienced the quiet, transformative power of the first snowfall. The landscape, now completely blanketed in white, was a reminder of the delicate balance between the changing seasons and the enduring beauty of nature. As dusk approached, the light in the meadow shifted, becoming cooler and more muted. The sun, now low on the horizon, cast long, faint shadows across the snow-covered field. The sky, painted with hues of gray and blue, provided a gentle backdrop to the field. The snowfall continued, its soft, steady descent creating a sense of calm and serenity. Mara and Adam prepared to leave the meadow, each feeling a deep sense of peace and reflection. The first snowfall of winter had transformed the landscape into a serene, magical place, a reminder of the beauty and tranquility that could be found in the cold, still world. The meadow, now bathed in the soft glow of dusk, seemed to hold the echoes of the day in its gentle embrace. The falling snow illuminated the field, casting a soft, diffused light and creating a serene, almost otherworldly atmosphere. The snow-covered grasses and trees, now blanketed in white, took on a new dimension, their shapes and textures softened by the gentle glow of the setting sun. The stream, partially obscured by the snow, reflected the colors of the sky, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow. As night fell, the meadow was enveloped in a tranquil stillness. The only sounds were the soft crunching of snow underfoot and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The meadow, with its quiet beauty and gentle rhythms, would continue to evolve as the seasons changed. The first snowfall, the soft whispers of the wind, and the serene glow of dusk would be waiting for Mara and Adam when they returned. The meadow, with its tranquil charm and timeless allure, would always hold a special place in their hearts. The changing seasons would continue to shape and transform the field, but the essence of the meadow, its tranquility, its serenity, and its quiet beauty, would remain constant. Chapter 19. The Festival of Lights. The meadow was awash in a soft, golden light as the Festival of Lights approached, a celebration marking the end of winter and the beginning of spring. The once quiet field was now bustling with activity, as villagers prepared for the annual event that would transform the landscape into a magical, illuminated wonderland. The morning was crisp and clear, with a hint of warmth in the air as the sun began its ascent. The sky was a vibrant blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds that drifted lazily across the expanse. The light of the rising sun bathed the meadow in a gentle, golden hue, casting long shadows and illuminating the field with a warm, inviting glow. Mara arrived early, her heart light with anticipation. The meadow, still covered in snow from the recent winter, was now adorned with colorful decorations and glowing lanterns. The villagers had worked tirelessly to prepare for the festival, their efforts evident in the vibrant displays that now adorned the landscape. The first thing Mara noticed was the path leading into the meadow, lined with lanterns of various shapes and sizes. The lanterns, crafted from colorful paper and adorned with intricate patterns, cast a soft, warm light along the path. Each lantern was a work of art, with delicate designs that seemed to dance and shimmer in the sunlight. As Mara walked along the path, she marveled at the creativity and effort that had gone into the decorations. The trees, once bare and stark, were now draped with strings of twinkling lights. The lights, interspersed with colorful garlands of flowers and ribbons, created a magical canopy overhead, their soft glow adding to the enchanting atmosphere. The meadow itself had been transformed into a vibrant, bustling space. Stalls and tents had been set up along the edges of the field, their colorful awnings adding to the festive ambience. The air was filled with the sweet aroma of freshly baked goods and the faint scent of flowers, mingling with the crisp, fresh air of early spring. Mara made her way to the central area of the meadow, where a large, intricately decorated stage had been erected. The stage, adorned with colorful drapes and garlands of flowers, was the focal point of the festival. At its center stood a large, ornate tree, covered in glowing lights and adorned with shimmering ornaments. The tree seemed to sparkle and shine, its lights casting a warm, inviting glow across the meadow. As the day progressed, the festival came to life with a flurry of activity. Villagers moved about the field, setting up their stalls and preparing for the evening's festivities. The sound of laughter and music filled the air, creating a lively, joyful atmosphere. Children ran about, their faces lit up with excitement as they played with colorful kites and other toys. Adam arrived in the early afternoon, his presence blending seamlessly with the festive energy of the meadow. He marveled at the transformation of the field, its wintry calm replaced by a vibrant, bustling celebration. The decorations and lights created a magical atmosphere, and the warmth of the spring sun added to the sense of joy and anticipation. He made his way through the festival, taking in the sights and sounds of the event. The stalls offered a variety of goods, from handmade crafts to delicious treats. The air was filled with the aroma of freshly cooked food, and the gentle hum of conversation created a sense of community and togetherness. As evening approached, the festival took on a new dimension. The sky, now painted in hues of orange and pink, provided a stunning backdrop to the illuminated meadow. The lanterns, now glowing brightly, cast a soft, warm light across the field. The trees, adorned with strings of lights, created a canopy of shimmering colors that added to the magical ambience. Mara and Adam found themselves drawn to the central area of the meadow, where the large tree stood as the centerpiece of the festival. The tree, covered in glowing lights and adorned with sparkling ornaments, was the focal point of the celebration. Its warm, inviting glow illuminated the surrounding area, creating a sense of warmth and enchantment. As night fell, the festival reached its peak. The lights of the meadow created a dazzling display, their colors and patterns shifting and changing as the evening progressed. The air was filled with the soft strains of music, and the sound of laughter and conversation created a joyful, festive atmosphere. Mara and Adam joined the villagers in celebrating the Festival of Lights, their hearts lifted by the sense of community and togetherness. The meadow, now transformed by the festival, was a place of joy and magic, its beauty heightened by the colorful decorations and glowing lights. The festival continued into the night, the meadow illuminated by a soft, golden glow. The lights, the decorations, and the sense of celebration created a magical atmosphere that lingered long after the event had ended. The meadow, with its vibrant colors and festive ambience, was a reminder of the beauty and joy that could be found in the changing seasons and the shared experiences of the community. As the festival drew to a close, the meadow began to return to its quieter, more serene state. The lights slowly dimmed, and the decorations were carefully taken down, leaving behind a field that was once again quiet and still. The sense of joy and celebration lingered in the air, a reminder of the magic and beauty that had graced the meadow during the Festival of Lights. Mara and Adam left the meadow with hearts full of joy and memories of a day filled with warmth, light, and community. The festival had been a beautiful celebration of the changing seasons and the shared experiences of those who had come together to mark the arrival of spring. The meadow, now quiet and peaceful, would continue to evolve and change, but the memories of the Festival of Lights would remain a cherished part of its story. Chapter 20: The Blooming of Spring. The meadow awoke to the full embrace of spring, its transformation from a snowy winter landscape to a vibrant, blooming paradise complete. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the field. The air was filled with the soft, melodic chirping of birds and the gentle rustling of leaves, signaling the arrival of a new season. Mara and Adam arrived early, their steps light and eager as they approached the meadow. The field, now a lush expanse of green, was covered in a breathtaking array of flowers. The once barren ground was now a tapestry of colors: vivid reds, brilliant yellows, soft pinks, and deep blues. Each bloom added its unique hue to the vibrant canvas that stretched out before them. The air was fragrant with the scent of blooming flowers, a sweet, heady aroma that seemed to wrap around them like a comforting embrace. The meadow, now alive with the colors and scents of spring, felt like a dreamscape, a place where nature had painted its most beautiful masterpiece. Mara and Adam wandered through the field, taking in the beauty of the blooming flowers. The wildflowers, with their delicate petals and vibrant colors, created a stunning contrast against the lush green grass. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, their movements creating a soft, rippling effect that added to the enchanting atmosphere. The meadow was alive with activity. Bees and butterflies flitted from flower to flower, their delicate wings shimmering in the sunlight. The sound of their gentle buzzing and fluttering added a melodic accompaniment to the tranquil scene. The flowers seemed to respond to the presence of the insects, their petals opening wider and their colors becoming even more vivid. As Mara and Adam explored the meadow, they came across a small stream that meandered through the field. The water, clear and sparkling in the sunlight, flowed gently over smooth stones and under arches of flowering branches. The stream, now surrounded by a lush carpet of greenery and flowers, added a sense of serenity and calm to the scene. The couple paused by the stream, their eyes drawn to the reflections of the blooming flowers and the dappled sunlight playing on the water's surface. The stream, with its gentle flow and serene beauty, seemed to be the perfect embodiment of the renewal and freshness of spring. In the distance, the large tree that had stood as the centerpiece of the Festival of Lights now stood tall and majestic, its branches adorned with fresh, green leaves and delicate blossoms. The tree, with its vibrant foliage and blooming flowers, added to the sense of transformation and renewal that filled the meadow. Mara and Adam continued their exploration, their path taking them through fields of wildflowers and groves of trees. The landscape was a patchwork of colors and textures, each area offering its own unique beauty. The grass, now lush and green, provided a soft carpet underfoot, and the flowers, with their delicate petals and vibrant hues, created a sense of wonder and enchantment. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the light became warmer and more golden. The meadow, bathed in the gentle glow of spring, seemed to come alive with a sense of joy and celebration. The flowers, the stream, and the trees all contributed to a sense of harmony and balance, creating a perfect reflection of the season's beauty. Mara and Adam settled on a grassy knoll, their view of the meadow framed by a canopy of blooming branches. They sat in silence, allowing themselves to fully absorb the beauty and tranquility of the scene. The gentle breeze rustled the flowers and the leaves, creating a soothing, rhythmic sound that added to the serene atmosphere. As the day wore on, the meadow continued to bask in the full glory of spring. The colors of the flowers deepened and intensified, their vibrant hues creating a stunning contrast against the clear blue sky. The air was filled with the sounds of nature, the chirping of birds, the buzzing of bees, and the soft rustle of leaves. Mara and Adam took a leisurely stroll through the meadow, their hearts lifted by the beauty and serenity of the scene. They wandered through fields of flowers, across the gently flowing stream, and under the canopy of the blooming trees. Each step brought them deeper into the enchanting world of spring, their senses overwhelmed by the sights, sounds, and scents of the season. As evening approached, the sun began its descent, casting a warm, golden light over the meadow. The shadows grew longer, and the colors of the flowers took on a softer, more subdued tone. The air became cooler, and the gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Mara and Adam returned to their knoll, their hearts full of gratitude for the beauty and tranquility of the day. The meadow, now bathed in the soft light of dusk, was a place of peace and contentment. The flowers, the trees, and the stream seemed to blend together in a harmonious celebration of spring. As night fell, the first stars began to appear in the sky, their light twinkling faintly above the meadow. The field, now shrouded in twilight, took on a magical quality, its beauty heightened by the soft, glowing light of the stars. Mara and Adam sat quietly, their hands entwined as they gazed out over the meadow. The scene before them was a perfect reflection of the season's renewal and beauty, a testament to the transformative power of nature. The meadow, with its vibrant colors and serene atmosphere, was a place where the essence of spring could be fully appreciated and cherished. The night deepened, and the meadow grew quieter, its beauty illuminated by the soft light of the stars. The field, now a tranquil, moonlit expanse, seemed to hold the promise of new beginnings and endless possibilities. Mara and Adam, their hearts full of joy and contentment, knew that the meadow would always be a place of magic and wonder, a cherished reminder of the beauty and serenity of spring.